Happy Thursday, folks. It is July the 9th. This is Hurricane Hub Live. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tim Pandages. Let's get right into it. Today, we're going to start things a little bit differently. We're going to start in the eastern Pacific because that's where all the activity is. The Atlantic remains storm-free and likely will stay that way for several more weeks. We've got one an investigative area now, and two other areas of interest in the eastern Pacific. So we could have our next named storm out there in the short term. And we're talking about ongoing Helene recovery in North Carolina. We've got a really great interview coming up with the American Red Cross in just a couple minutes, so stick around for that. All right, here's a look at tropical satellite out there in the eastern Pacific. We've got one area here. This is the most likely area to develop into our next named storm, although this is not the area that's currently tagged as an invest. It's this one here that's up to a 60% chance in orange that is pretty much due south of Hawaii, moving west and heading into a different basin, the central Pacific, and then one in between those two that's got a low chance of developing. Here's the percentage probabilities here: 40% in the next 2 days, 60% in the next 7 days for our invest. This is Invest 90C. We'll get into that in a minute. 30% chance in 7 days for this one, and this one here within the next week. So not in the short term, really talking longer range here. 70% chance, highly likely that that becomes the next named storm. So Invest means investigative area. Now we're at 90. It's just a record number. It cycles from 90 to 99. And I added a new basin indicator here for C for Central Pacific, and that's where this investigative area will eventually go and possibly develop, so it would not get a name on the list in the eastern Pacific. So investigative area is climbing the pyramid here. Up next will be likely tropical depression or tropical storm, which is where it gets a name if, in fact, it does go down that line. Next name on the list in the eastern Pacific is Alita, which would be the 5th named storm of the season. We've already had 4. All were just tropical storms: Amanda, Boris, Christina, and Douglas. So our scorecard so far unchanged. Atlantic Basin and Arthur with 1, and then we've got 4 named storms in the eastern Pacific. We may be adding to that here, maybe 5 or 6 over the next couple days with those 3 separate areas of interest we'll be monitoring carefully. All right, back in September 2024, almost 2 years ago now, Hurricane Helene brought record-breaking rain and wind to North Carolina, leaving a lasting impact across the entire region. Residents are still picking up the pieces after the storm. Now, after months of negotiations, North Carolina finally has a new budget, including millions designated to continued Helene relief and recovery.
It appropriates another $700 million to help the people of Western North Carolina continue their recovery from Hurricane Helene.
Coming up after the break, we have 2 special guests joining us with more on the continued efforts to rebuild, restore, and revitalize communities in Western North Carolina. All right, welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. We've got very special guests with us tonight. We've got Tina Weaver, who's Deputy Director of Long-Term Recovery with the American Red Cross, and Adrian Mines, who's the Executive Director of the Western North Carolina chapter. Good evening to you both. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Good evening. Thank you for having us.
Now let's talk about the American Red Cross's immediate response to Hurricane Helene coming up on almost 2 years ago. Can you describe what that was like? It must have been an immense operation.
Yeah, it was something that we have never experienced before as an organization, or like in our personal lives here in Western North Carolina. So on September 25th, we had our core leadership team arrive at our headquarters, which is located in Asheville, North Carolina. And we immediately found out that this was going to be a storm that we never have seen before, right? So as soon as the storm came through Asheville, North Carolina, we knew immediately, as the Red Cross organization, we had to respond and ensure that we had our mass care services covered, right? So what does that mean? We had to ensure that we had shelter staffing. We had to get transportation to the mega shelters that were standing up at the time. We had to collaborate with our partners, our non-government partners and government partners when it comes to feeding and really taking a look at the essential items that our community members needed at the time. So once we got that on the ground, we later were able to cover other shelters throughout Western North Carolina. We also supported different community care stations. So once we had clearer roads and had access to other hubs in Western North Carolina, especially in the rural areas, we had hubs where we provided food, clothing, blankets, cleanup kits, so brooms, gloves, sponges, water. We had shower trailers. We had laundry units. We had bathrooms, basically where people can just come and kind of have a sense of familiarity as far as having the necessary things they needed at that time.
Now, an operation that large doesn't come without its challenges. Can you talk a little bit about some of those that you ran into?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge was, communication. At first we had no connectivity. So that was a challenge. So we had to leave our headquarter office in Asheville. We had to use the local fire department because they had a Starlink that we could utilize at the time, so we can continue to reach out to our partners and receive requests. We had to go to the nearest police department because they had some connectivity. And then we also learned, especially with our shelters and mega shelters, that folks were starting to leave the shelters earlier than we expected. And we knew that that did not really show the impact this storm had. So we had to figure out why people were leaving, and then also where was everybody else. So we had to have our volunteers deploy into these rural areas to assess the needs of the community. And what we found is that our community members were already mobilizing. They were practicing this mutual aid effort and really gathering all their resources in their small communities and helping their immediate community. So we had to find out, okay, how can we deliver our services a little differently? What do they need? Because not only were folks helping one another, they didn't want to leave their land. Some were afraid, like if they were to leave and go to a shelter, maybe someone else would be there when they got back, or it just wouldn't be there once they got back. So we needed to accommodate the need of our people in the rural areas. So then we had to be creative. We partnered with our community partners. We had mules that would go out to these rural areas with supplies. We had ATVs. We had helicopters. We needed to get to our community members and provide them with filtration straws. We had generators. We had hot tents. We just needed resources that made people feel comfortable to stay where they were at.
Now, Western North Carolina is just such a huge geographical area. Do you have some sort of feel for how many people the American Red Cross helped during the ongoing recovery efforts there?
Yeah, so I think we supported over 50 shelters. We provided nearly about 23,000 overnight stays. We were able to deliver 450,000 hot meals, provided just under 970,000 individual snacks, and that doesn't include the 35,000 shelf-stable meals we served, especially during those early days. Again, with our volunteers and community partners, running mule trains, ATVs, helicopters, we provided over 36,000 cleanup kits, over 600,000 emergency supply items, and served over 127,000 households.
Just amazing work you all do. Now, Tina, I want to bring you in here. I've got a question for you. Coming up on 2 years now, in September, since Helene made landfall and moved up along the spine of the Appalachians, what does the recovery efforts look like now?
Yeah. So within these large disasters, the recovery efforts are really spawned when resources are allowed. So we were able to come into a position because of the incredible generosity of our donors, in which it had allowed us to stand up our operation in a 3-year post-disaster. So we're coming up on 2 years, and we do anticipate on being here another year beyond that. With our local chapters, we will be here much longer, but our long-term recovery operation is that 3-year stint. And inside of that, because of those resources were allowed, we've been able to distribute $54 million in awarded grants to over 67 partners. These are LTRGs, disaster case management groups, repairs and rebuilds, food distribution, you name it. Where the need is, we are looking to fill it, and we are continuing to do so. Another component of that is our impact has continued in a way of individual assistance. To date, we have distributed over $7 million, reaching over 1,600 individuals through our expanded recovery assistance program. This is all coupled in understanding that we've generated over 200 partners throughout this recovery to date, and understanding that there's still a lot more to do. We need to educate our community so that we can be better prepared for the next disaster. And that education will span across floods, landslides, wildfires, what is really pertinent to our communities, in understanding that we have to remain relevant in a state of readiness.
Now, what does the transition look like, Tina, from the emergency assistance right at the onset of the disaster, the ongoing disaster, to long-term recovery for potentially years to come?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that emergency assistance is that response that Adrian shared those details around. And now there's a recovery is that we're engaging with the community, in which they can build a sense of resilience, a sense of understanding how we can, again, be best prepared for that next disaster. When we look at these 200 plus partners that we've created over the past almost 2 years, these are the folks and organizations that were the boots on the ground alongside the Red Cross and independently from the Red Cross. But creating those strings of connectivity has allowed us to really spawn an ecosystem of support, and understanding that this is going to take several more years. We're grateful for the funding the state has just announced most recently, but understanding that this is going to take another 5 years for full recovery. We look at our waterways, we look at our homes, we look at the trees on the ground. There is a tremendous amount of work to do, and for this being a 100-year storm for Western North Carolina and northeastern Tennessee, this is something that we don't have a baseline to work from. So we're doing a lot by learning, but we're doing it in this ecosystem of support with all the partners we've generated over the past 2 years.
Now, I want to pose this question to the both of you. With your experiences working with the emergency assistance and then the recovery, is there any stories that you can recall of like families you encountered or communities you engaged with that just resonates with you to this day?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could have an entire just conversation around this. Adrian shared the countless lives that we've had the gratitude of being able to serve alongside and reach. But one story in particular is Miss Laurel. And Miss Laurel is up in our high country part of Western North Carolina. Miss Laurel's story is one of so many, but a tree dropped on her house, destroying it. And this was just 10 minutes before she was standing right in the line of the tree where it dropped on her home. Miss Laurel had nothing to do. She had nowhere to go. But the kindness of our community was able to give her an RV in which she was able to reside in for a period of time. Not but a year and months later did her home get rebuilt. And we're actually so excited because we'll be doing a ribbon cutting at Miss Laurel's here in the next week. But just to understand the gravity of it's taken over a year and a half for her to be displaced from her home, and understanding that this is not something that one organization was able to bring back to Miss Laurel, but it was a village of organizations that we were able to work alongside. And again, these stories are countless, but we are here to share like the stories of Miss Laurel's and so many others. And at the same time, there's so many that continue to struggle. So we definitely want to illuminate that the need is still there, the successes are there, but we're here to continue to create as much positive impact as we possibly can.
That's a great story. Adrian, how about you? Do you have a story you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think Tina's story is phenomenal. Like she mentioned, there's several others like that. I would just share just being on the ground and being in the shelters and seeing how resilient people can be. You always hear how disasters bring out the best of individuals, right? You really get a sense of what true mutual aid looks like. And it was just amazing to see that in person, seeing people come together in shelters who they never met before, right? But how can I help you? Hey, do you need a blanket? Hey, do you need a snack? I got some extra snacks over here. Especially when it comes to the kids, right? I have two young girls. So being in those shelters, seeing families with the young children, and just really witnessing the resiliency, how the parents were able to stay strong and positive, ensuring that their children felt comfortable. And that allowed the children to, one, be themselves, and then also find ways how they can help out throughout the shelter. If it was just cleaning up, it was just throwing things out, or just asking questions, questions around, how can we better be prepared for the next storm, and then sharing that education right away. So really for me, it's just seeing and witnessing, how strong we can be when we all come together.
A true example of neighbors helping neighbors. Now, as we wrap things up, guys, I've got one more question for you. What types of resources are still available for folks that may still be being impacted by what's left from Helene's remnants?
That's a great question. Thank you so much for asking it. Right now, we have an incredible opportunity especially with this call today, of understanding that we still have individual financial aid available, and we are eager to get these funds in the hands of folks. So if you're hearing this, get connected with your long-term recovery group. That's where it's at. And we can work with our long-term recovery groups or our DCMs in understanding how disaster case management and long-term recovery groups, in which we can see if you qualify for our expanded recovery assistance program. Additionally, beyond that, we do have a lot of preparedness education that we're working with various partners, and we would love to continue to do that. That's going to be a real focal point over the next 12 months in which we can really expand and provide the right supplies and materials, but also that critical knowledge and understanding of what do you do in a flood? Where do you go to avoid a landslide? In our mountainous community, we need to understand these things. And then even on the horizon with wildfires and the lack of rain we've been having, it is very, very imminent in the future that we understand a disaster will be there. But if we can provide this level of education to individuals and families, we know that we're better positioned for the next disaster.
Well, thank you guys so much. Tina Weaver and Adrian Mines from the American Red Cross, I appreciate you reminding us that even though it may not be talked about very much anymore on the news, still people are suffering and being impacted by the storm nearly 2 years later, and you both are doing amazing work. Appreciate you joining us on the show tonight.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for having us.
All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Hurricane Hub Live. We're joined by a storm-free Atlantic basin. The entirety of it is nice and quiet tropical formation, not expected over the next 7 days. Now, next name on the list, of course, we've only knocked off one. Arthur, 12-hour tropical storm. That's it. Bertha's up next, then Cristobal, and then Dolly. Now, it's been 21 days since Arthur came and went. Again, it was around for 12 hours. But it's not really a large gap between storms. 21 days, 3 weeks, not all that long, especially compared to the longest gaps on record, which was just not too long ago in 1999. 61 days it took from one storm to the next, went through the entire month of July with nothing, and then most of August, too. And then even back in 2022, we went through majority of July and almost all of August without anything. 60 days went by between named storms there. So it could take a while before we see our next named storm. And with a growing El Nino, it's already out there. It's just going to get stronger and stronger. That may challenge that gap record. We'll see. We'll see. We still got a ways to go. June 20th, typically our first named storm. We saw Arthur on the 17th. July 17th, 30 years average is around July 17th for the second named storm. Will it happen on that exact day? No. But on either end, a possibility. Sometimes it's way sooner. Sometimes it's way later. Now, the percentage of storms by month, of course, July isn't all that active. It's one of the 3 least active months of the season. Ramp things up in August, a third of all storms in September, and then 17% in October. So July could be active, it could not be. Tropical development expected through the middle of the month, nothing. Climate Prediction Center here right through the 21st. Nothing in the Atlantic. Does show the possibility of some activity, moderate chance of development in the Eastern Pacific. Jumping out to almost the end of July, so we could go through the entire month of July with nothing. According to the Climate Prediction Center, there's no chance of any development through the 28th of July. Still looking at some chances growing in the Eastern Pacific. And then you can see behind me, even the Central Pacific heating up there. Big reason for that, nothing in the Atlantic, is the amount of dust. Just a ton of dust out there. Not unusual for this time of the year. Typically, we see that earlier in the season. And as we get deeper into the tropical season, we start to see these lift farther north, gaining latitude and opening up the main development region. But you can see this playing right out through next weekend. Not the case yet. Still lots of dust, dry air in the mid-levels, very stable environment. So unlikely to see anything developing, despite the sea surface temperature environment being suitable for tropical systems. 78, 79, 80-degree water temperature is all you need for that latent heat transfer. And we have that. It's anomalously warm a good chunk of the area, but not as anomalously warm as it's been in the past. You look over at the Eastern Pacific, and this is very anomalously warm, right? We've got the El Nino growing here, a very strong indication of that, and that's just going to get stronger as we go deeper through the season. All right, we're going to take a quick break. Tropical Trivia up next. Welcome back. It is time for trivia. Yesterday's question, which ocean basin produces the most tropical cyclones each year? That's going to be the Western Pacific Ocean with the most storms each year. Tonight's question, which Atlantic season was the most active on record? Was it 2005, the year of Katrina, 2020, 2022, or 2017? I'll have the answer for you tomorrow night on Hurricane Hub Live. We'll see you then.